Okay, well, we'll go ahead and get the introductions started. Welcome to the June 30 minutes of excellence session. We started doing these sessions. There was overwhelmingly a request to cover topics in short snippets. We did a round of listening sessions during National Apprenticeship Week at the end of 2021 and developed a list of things that people just had general questions they wanted to know a little bit more about. One of those topics was using workforce funds to pay for registered apprenticeship. And so we're gonna dig down into that a little bit. Marianne, I'll introduce Marianne in just a little bit, but Marianne has prepared some information for us. Please feel free to ask questions or make comments in the chat. As Marianne is going through her stuff, I'll be watching that. If we have any time at the end, then I'll make sure and bring that to her attention. If we can't get to everything, or if there's just overwhelmingly, then we'll get Marianne back and we'll do a full-length webinar. So we're super excited to have Marianne Lawrence. I am super grateful that she's here. She is a NADUP board member and has been a NADUP board member for many years. She was on the NADUP board and the NADUP board chair when I started here as the CEO. So I will always have a special fondness for Marianne. But Marianne trains through her company Power Notes on all things workforce. And so if there's ever something that, registered apprenticeship and WIOA funding, she just seemed like the perfect person to do that. So Marianne, I'm gonna throw it over to you. You and your slides. Like I said, I'll monitor the chat. Also, do not be afraid to ask questions. So especially when it comes to financial stuff. My background in workforce, I used to be a financial manager at a local workforce investment board in Missouri. And so definitely don't be afraid to ask questions, put those in the chat. We'll keep them as anonymous as possible, but we do want to make sure that you guys get as much information as possible. All right, Marianne, I'll throw it over to you.
Great, thanks a bunch. I just want to say that one of my best decisions in my career of 44 years in the workforce industry was hiring Melissa to be our CEO. I can't even tell you how much we've grown since you've been in that position and how many people argued with us about not being in Washington, D.C. And it really has worked out. So thank you, Melissa. I'm thrilled to be part of this. We're going to talk about WIOA funding as it relates to registered apprenticeships today. And I want to say that I'm not going to teach you how to start an apprenticeship. We have other workshops for that. But I would encourage you to think about becoming sponsors and to think about being the lead. Most of the local areas that I'm working with right now are working with other entities who are running apprenticeships, but it doesn't keep you from actually being the lead on it. So keep that in mind, and there'll be future trainings to help you with that. But today, how are you going to spend your money? I want to say that I have been, I'm all over the board with my customers in terms of how much money they have left and whether they're going to have cuts or whether they're going to have increases, etc. That's kind of anything goes. It's been interesting for me to see, but most of my customers have not spent all their money. And so when I heard about this topic, I was like, wow, this is just a natural way to invest your WIOA dollars that's going to result in win-win-wins all over the place. As indicated, there last year, 2.2 million WIOA enrollees in the country, approximately, and only 2,700 of those were co-enrolled in apprenticeships, whereas compared to the 221,000 approximately that started apprenticeship programs. So what we want to do is we want to encourage you to use co-enrollments to expand the service menu for individuals who want to be enrolled in registered apprenticeships. I don't think I have to tell you that it is going to be one of the primary policy focuses as we enter new legislation, the WIOA 2022 legislation, and it is kind of the in thing right now. And it's the in thing because it's about people actually going to work and getting technical skills. And so we're going to see more and more of it. So we need to align WIOA much better with registered apprenticeships. Let's look at a little bit of the terminology to jump off a bit here. Registered apprenticeships call on-the-job work, on-the-job learning. WIOA Title I calls it on-the-job training. Same thing, on-the-job learning versus on-the-job training. The registered apprenticeship programs require some classroom, either in-person or virtual related training instruction. WIOA has individual training accounts. Same thing. Do know that registered apprenticeships with the U.S. Department of Labor are automatically on your eligible training provider list. So that's a plus if you're looking at spending any of your individual training account dollars on it. So some basics, if we're looking at a registered apprenticeship, and these are going to sound familiar to you if you're WIOA, because this is the same things we're doing. They're employer driven. It's a earn and learn approach. And I think most of you realize that people don't really have the opportunity to just go to school and not have money. Registered apprenticeships are working with new hires or existing workers. It's a work-based service. It embraces career pathways through upskilling and making sure that wages get increased. It supports our in-demand industries and occupations, and it provides a national credential. Those are all very important factors. Let's compare that to WIOA. WIOA provides basic and individualized career services. We fund on-the-job training, individual training accounts, work-based learning, supportive services. I've listed a few of the supportive services here. Basically anything that's required to stay in a training program or in a job while you're enrolled in WIOA can be a supportive service. I've heard of a variety of different things that have happened. People have bought false teeth, they've bought tires, they've bought washing machines. You just have to be able to connect it back with an individual's ability to stay in school and or to keep a job. So let's talk about co-enrollments. I monitor a lot. In fact, I was on a call this morning with the Kansas local area reporting my monitoring out to their board. And I'm finding that co-enrollments are a really weak part of our system in general. Even between the older youth and the adult program, which are naturals from 18 to 24 for co-enrollments, we're not doing much of it. Sometimes it's because we have different providers doing those two things and they're not really communicating with each other. But in general, we're not benefiting from co-enrollment. Why do we want co-enrollment? Well, we want it because it gives us a larger service menu for our job seekers and our youth. It increases our service menu options. It also, from an administrative standpoint, increases our ability to use our dollars because we have flexibility in which program we're going to charge what to. And so let's think about co-enrollment as it relates to registered apprenticeships. So specifically the Title I adult, the Title I dislocated worker, youth, and don't forget the incumbent worker program. I train related training instruction for the workforce professional registered apprenticeship. And most of the ones that I've put on are currently already working. They're throwing some new hires into the mix, but most of them are incumbent workers. And the same is often true of those registered apprenticeships that aren't directly related to our profession. So what are some benefits? They have a job. They got a job. Woohoo! They get a national credential. They get good pay. There's pay increases that are built in, and they contribute to the work-based learning % requirements. As many of you know, we are required to spend at least 20% of some of our funding streams on work-based learning. Another benefit is that our workforce system provides assessments. And that assessment with registered apprenticeship can help those programs find out if an individual is going to be a good fit. Are they suitable? We talk about eligibility a lot. We don't often talk about suitability. And suitability is really a consideration of reasonable chance for success. We also provide career coaching and case management, starting with a pretty comprehensive strategic individual employment plan. We have educational study options where we can pay for school with individual training accounts. We have all sorts of capabilities for supportive services. We have work-based learning on the job training, and of course, pre-apprenticeships that would benefit the apprenticeship program. Here's things you want to consider. This can only help your performance. Your wages are higher than typical. They're actually working, and there's a national credential. One of the biggest complaints that employers have working with our system is the paperwork. So I'm going to say to you, you do the paperwork. Yes, you have to do it. Review what you need to review with the employer, fill out the information, go over it with them and have them sign it. Don't hand them a stack of paper to take care of. I would say this in relationship to OJTs, on the job trainings, or any type of work you're doing with businesses. Don't expect them to pick up a stack of paper and deal with it. Another consideration is don't forget, we have tax credit access for individuals with barriers. We also have federal bonding access for re-entry clients that help protect employers that also benefit the apprenticeship program. And then we, of course, have the pre-apprenticeship options, which are essential skills that we sometimes call job readiness skills. We sometimes call soft skills. I did focus groups with 150 employers from 3 different industries: construction, advanced manufacturing, and hospitality. I had about 50 in each. And the number one thing 150 out of 150 people said to me is, Marianne, we need essential skills. Our people don't have them that we're hiring. And it doesn't matter if they just have a GED, if they have a associate's degree, or if they have a master's degree, they still are lacking essential skills. So that's going to be a very important prep for the registered apprenticeship program. So how do you prep? Well, first, what programs are in your area? You want to review your local policies. Boy, do you need to do that, because most local policies have a cap on how many dollars you can spend. Some say lifetime, which I think is kind of funny because, what's a lifetime, and how do you know I moved to Texas from Maryland, right? But look at your caps, because in a career pathway world, we shouldn't have as much limitation on training dollars, but we also need to be able to have a return on that investment. But look at your local policies and consider some adjustments. Know what your budget availabilities are. Establish your procedures for exactly what you're going to support with registered apprenticeships and at what level you're going to support it. What do I mean by that? I mean, are you going to do the entire time for on the job training 50%? Are you going to do the first part of the training on 50% or the last part of the training on 50%? How much of the school are you going to pay for? And we'll go through these in a minute. But you really need to come up with your strategies from a local perspective. And then know the features and benefits of accessing these funds that you can pitch to employers and to apprenticeship experts. You want to work with your businesses, your apprenticeship programs, and establish a profile for recruitment. What are they looking for? What's that profile of individual they're looking for? And then what do? Well, you recruit. You're going to get reverse referrals, employer referrals. You're going to get workforce system pool referrals from all the partners and your system. You're going to screen, you're going to conduct assessment, You're going to determine eligibility. You're going to coordinate with the apprenticeship program to select the appropriate co-enrollment candidates. I'm not telling you all or nothing, because it isn't that way, because suitability matters. You're going to complete that enrollment paperwork, and you're going to set up a coaching schedule. This is your co-enrollment process with WIOA and Registered Apprenticeships. It looks identical to WIOA and other things that you do, like on-the-job training, right? So we're not asking you to expand your thinking to some whole new set of processes. We already have them. It's just, how do they fit with the Registered Apprenticeship program? So I want you to consider that, but primarily what we're looking at is on-the-job training dollars, individual training accounts, and supportive services, and consultation on tax credit kinds of options and federal bonding. Those are the most important things that we're looking at here. And you all have those capabilities. So we need to stop being afraid. I just talked with some people this morning who said, we're just afraid to do it. It's like, jump. It's perfect. It's a perfect marriage, because the performance is there. You're in your jobs to save lives, to change lives. That's what you do for a living. And the Registered Apprenticeship marriage with WIOA fits. It will help you change more lives. With that, I will turn it over to Melissa. Questions? Yoo-hoo.
Hold on. Okay, here we go. Okay, here's the first one. We had a question about social enterprise. So the question is, can we register a construction program that has their students working in a social enterprise receiving a salary as an apprenticeship program? So if I'm understanding that right, when you say social enterprise, that would just be a company that operates like any other company, but a social enterprise directs their profits back into improvements to make their community better and social investments. So I would believe, and Marianne, you jump in here, but if it's a program that is training construction trades that ends up, it's a earn and learn, and it ends up with those having a career in that trade, you could attempt to register that as an apprenticeship program, correct?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think a good example of that is that we have a nice combination of apprenticeship programs for nonprofits versus for-profit. So the social enterprise piece fits too.
Let's go back to the eligible training provider list. There have been several questions that have come in about the ETPL, because there are, depending on what state you are, there's the same basic rules for ETPL. The same basic rules just say that the states have to have rules, right? And so everybody has their own rules for putting a training provider on the ETPL. But if you get that approved as a registered apprenticeship, that training provider or that particular training program automatically qualifies on the ETPL.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes, absolutely. Now, there are some
Okay.
states, in fact, I was in one last week working in Arkansas. There are some states where even if they're on the national and state eligible training provider list, they require the local boards to validate that. So there would be a little different process for that, but not as comprehensive or difficult as it would be starting from scratch.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, my background, I come from a rural region in South Central Missouri. We had the same exact situation. We have a lot of loggers in our area, and a logger just forest, they harvest forest products, but that is not something that a lot of schools teach. And so that was a great apprenticeable occupation, and we were able to get that on the ETPL that way. Okay, here's another one. You mentioned that apprenticeship participants earn a national credential. Is that different when a state is an SAA state? So for instance, Nevada, it has a state registered apprenticeship for software developers. If it's different, right? SAA states versus an OA or a nationally
Well,
recognized
they will all be on the national database, the RAPIDS program. They'll all be there. So the whole idea is that an employer can go into that national database and pull up an individual's name and validate that they have that credential. So it's about a split 50-50 in the country of which ones are state driven, which ones are federal driven. But yes, they all end up on the federal site. And the difference between the two is primarily in order to create your on-the-job learning with a registered apprenticeship, you establish something called a work process schedule. And the work process schedule is approved by the state or the national. And so though that approval process differs if you're a state versus the national.
Yep, absolutely. And let's go back to what you started at the very beginning. So paying for someone, a participant who's going through a registered apprenticeship program is no different than paying for someone to go through training and then an OJT contract. So right. There may be just a little bit of a difference in verbiage, but it's the same thing. Mm-hmm. We have seen that with apprenticeship, employers obviously want to move very fast. You just follow the same eligibility, right? So do you want to expand just a little bit on that? You don't, there's nothing that circumvents any of that eligibility. You would treat it just like you would anything else. They're just going through a registered apprenticeship program versus paying for them to go to a school in one silo and then paying for them an OJT contract in a separate silo.
Yeah, the registered apprenticeships are work-based learning kinds of opportunities to start with. And so we treat them just like any other participant. So what are your state and local policies related to eligibility and or suitability, priority of service? All of those things are still relevant. And so we want to put them through the same types of assessment processes. Maybe they've already been through an assessment that we can utilize with the apprenticeship project. But yes, where we want to really pay most attention to is that negotiation process on how much you're going to pay out of WIOA funds versus how much you're not going to pay. I know when I was a local director many, many years ago, and registered apprenticeships were first kind of starting up, they wanted us to pay for the whole thing. And we didn't really have the funding to pay for a 2-year program, to pay for OJT for 2 years. And it wasn't our local policy. Our local policy we followed the DOT, the .code, Dictionary of Occupational Title, and the specific vocational prep numbers in order to decide that. So we had a decision to make. Were we going to pay for when somebody starts the program for 6 months, or are we going to wait till their last 6 months to pay for it? We didn't, back then, we didn't really do much with incumbent worker program, because technically if you don't enroll them till the last 6 months, they're an incumbent worker now. So we have those strategies. I would say that we need to be more flexible on that now and be willing to pay more, because it's about achieving self-sufficiency, getting a good wage, and being independent of programs. And so we know that a career pathways model costs more per person than the traditional throw them in certified nursing assistant and then take an exit. And oh, by the way, you're probably going to see them again in 6 months because they're going to quit that, because it's not a fun job to have and it doesn't pay very much. So now we want to invest, and we want to give ourselves the opportunity to help them really get to the point where they don't need us anymore. So there is a lot of strategy involved in it. So, and we have to talk to our workforce boards and our chief elected officials and help them understand the importance to help fund more of it than we used to fund, so that we don't have to keep redoing it with the same person, that we can do the job right the first time. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I would add to that, for those of you that are on, if you are considered the fiscal person for your local area, get involved in these conversations. If you're not the fiscal person, you need to get them involved in these conversations. So, you know, there was a time when I was the no person. Somebody would come with a new program or something we had never done before, and I would say absolutely not, because new things are not always the easiest for us that are in the accounting office. And so get those fiscal folks involved. Like Mary Ann said, talk to, you know, the board. If there's a local policy that's preventing you from doing this, we see that a lot. There's nothing that prohibits people from doing it at the federal level, potentially not at the state level. It might be a local policy. So you definitely need to get involved, because those things can change. Okay, Mary Ann.
I just wanted to say one. I wanted to say one more thing in relationship to how much you're going to pay. Do make sure that you don't pay at all, because we need skin in the game on the other side. We need reasons for employers to keep people after the apprenticeship project's over. And so make sure that there's a fair distribution of who's paying for what. That's it.
Absolutely. Amanda, you just asked, is it possible to get a copy of this PowerPoint? And that's a great segue into my closing. So these 30 minutes of excellence sessions are brought to you through a partnership that we have with Stoffel Partners. So NADAP is one of the leading partners on one of the centers of excellence that Office of Apprenticeship and Department of Labor put together. Our particular center focuses on system alignment and strategic partnership. We want to see the number of co-enrollments go up, and so we are going to do everything possible, whether it's training, professional development, hand-holding, whatever we can do to get that number up. And so as Workforce, we partner with trainers like Mary Ann to bring that information to you. You can access recordings of all of the 30 Minutes of Excellence series, all of the studies and reports that we have done, pretty much anything we're compiling about registered apprenticeship and under the Center of Excellence on the NADAP webpage, and you'll find the center's personal webpage. That will also link you out to Stoffel and all of their partners and all of the information that they have as well. So happy Wednesday. Thank you guys for joining us on a fiscal 30 Minutes of Excellence. Remember, these are free. They'll always be free to members and non-members. You can visit the NADAP website to sign up for future sessions. Mary Ann, thank you again for taking a break in your work to join us from Arizona. You have a fantastic time out there with that board. Everybody else, have a wonderful week.
Catch y'all later. Woohoo!